What is going on, my friends? Back again with another video. Today, talking about some super important stuff that a lot of you may not know. Some of you may know some of these steps, but I want to put in 5 of my most useful tips that I can give you guys to take awful footage and make it into amazing footage. As usual, if you guys are new here, consider subscribing, joining the community. If you do enjoy this kind of content, please leave a like. Helps the growth of this channel a huge amount. Also like to mention, if you're looking for any new presets or plugins to kind of spice up your videos, check out my website, link down in the description. We've got a bunch of cheap packs you guys can use for Adobe Premiere and After Effects. It's going to help you up your game a huge amount. Anyways, without any more talking, let's get right into these 5 quick little tips. Now, the first one, this is probably the most known tip that a lot of you guys already know, and that is just using warp stabilizer to fix shaky footage. I also want to give you guys some tips on top of that, just because sometimes warp stabilizer doesn't work. So let me just show you the basics of warp stabilizer. Footage that is shot handheld, and we want to add an effect that's going to make it look like it's shot on a stabilizer. Now, obviously, the way to fix this in camera is to invest in a nice stabilizer so you can get some nice smooth footage. Sometimes you're still gonna have a shaky shot, or even if you are shooting handheld, maybe you just want to smooth it out a bit. So to do this warp stabilizer effect, all you need to do is just right click your clip, go ahead and nest it, and make sure you do that first. So nest your clip, then we're going to go over to our effects bar, and for me, I click this arrow and go to effects. If you're working in the editing tab of Premiere, it might be over here. So once you're in your effects library, just look up a warp stabilizer effect, and keep in mind this won't work if you already have slow motion applied to your clip. Place that warp stabilizer, and you're going to see analyzing in background. Now, if your clip is too shaky, it's going to look a little bit too warped. So let's check out how this looks. Because there was already bars on this video, this is looking a little bit weird, a little bit messed up. So what we can do is we can crop this to fix it, or we can go into our settings to fix it. What you can do is you can change this around. You can make it so that there isn't any cropping. So what you can do is just look up a little crop effect, drag that onto your clip, and then let's come back up here to our effect controls as usual, drag down to the crop, and then let's just make the top 13% and bottom 13%. See how that looks, and that looks good. So more smooth. It does look like it's shot on a stabilizer. So like I said, just a simple little trick within Premiere. Let me show you the before and after of what that's going to look like. As you can see, pretty shaky, and this is the after. A lot better, just like that. So like I said, simple little tip that's not always going to work. If it's too shaky, it might be messed up a bit. Here's a quick little alternative if that doesn't work, or you can try this tip out as well. Now, I made a video talking about how to get nice slow motion even if you're shooting at a low frame rate. This clip is in 24 frames per second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on it, I'm going to go to speed duration, and I'm going to make the speed something like 60%, and I'm going to change the time interpolation to optical flow. Now, that's an important step, because if you don't make it optical flow, it's going to look pretty choppy when you slow it down. Optical flow is just going to help it and smooth it out. So let's click OK, and then let's go ahead, and this is also another important step. Click it, go to sequence render selection so we can see what it's actually going to look like with the flow rendered in, and bam, we'll play that out, and that looks pretty good as well. It's still a little bit shaky. It still has pretty smooth slow motion, especially considering that this is 24 frames per second, which is definitely not a good frame rate for slow motion. So that's a super powerful tool. Let's talk about our next little tip that's going to help out your footage. Yeah, so this next tip is something that's super useful because it's bound to happen throughout your career at least once, and that is when you have an issue of flickering footage. Now, let me play this out and let me show you exactly what I'm talking about. I'll make this bigger just so it's easier to see. Now, as you see, if you look here, there's some flickering. You can also kind of get this strobe effect going on in your footage, and that is usually a lighting issue. Depending on the FPS of your shot, depending on the lighting of your shot, you can get this, and there is a super useful plugin that is going to help with this, and that is called Flicker Free. I'm sure there are some other plugins, but this is the one that I know of, and this is the one that I think works the best in my opinion. So let's go ahead and throw that Flicker Free plugin on here, and you guys are going to see the huge difference. So for this, we're going to need After Effects. So let's go ahead and just right click this, place with After Effects composition. All right, so now we are in After Effects, and I'm telling you, this is honestly a lifesaver for a lot of projects because sometimes this flickering can get really distracting. So let's go ahead and just look this up, and all you need to do is just look up Flicker Free. It's by Digital Anarchy. You can download that and you can install that into your plugins folder in After Effects. Once you do have that, it's as easy as just dragging and dropping it. Usually I just leave it alone and it completely fixes it. Let's go ahead and click File, Save, and then hop back into Premiere, and you guys are going to see the difference. Now pay attention to the edges of this. As you can see, there's little to no flickering, and the tiny amount of minimal flickering you can't even notice. It's something that can really save your entire project. Render that out in slow motion. Let me show you. Looking super crispy, can save you a huge amount of trouble. All right guys, on to the next tip. Now this tip is super self-explanatory and also one of the first things that beginners know of, but it's not one of the first things that beginners actually learn. And what I'm talking about is color correction. Now color correction, you need to learn color correction when you start off, because getting the right color, the right exposure, the right lighting of your shot is insanely important. And if for some reason in the camera it's messed up, you need to fix that within color correction in post. Now to fix this issue before it starts, I recommend you guys look up how to properly expose your camera, how to shoot in a proper color profile. The best profiles are always the more flat ones so that you can have more control of the color afterwards. So neutral, flat profiles, log profiles, cinema profiles, anything like that. You don't want to be shooting in normal. You want to have full control of your colors afterwards within post. Now I'm going to click on here, and the first thing that stands out to me with this clip is it's a little bit too dark. So I'm just going to come to my Lumetri color panel in my color workspace, and I'm just going to bump up the exposure like that, and look, a million times better. Now that was just one simple thing. Okay guys, now let me show you a more advanced example of when you need to color correct. Let's go ahead and fix this around so that it's not so red, as well as we don't want the sky so washed out. Now there's a few ways we can do this. Of course, changing your exposure. Here's what that looks like. Let's try and make the sky more kind of blue instead of green, and just really fix these colors. So the first thing I want to do is I want to change the temperature, make it a little bit more blue, and that's just going to fix the sky as you see like that. What I can also do, I'm going to bump the exposure up a tiny bit. I'm gonna add some more contrast. Honestly, the best way to learn this is just to use your eye and just to tweak around with the settings. The more and more experience you gain doing this, and the more and more you kind of tweak with it, the better you're gonna become at it, and the better you're going to be at recognizing when there's a color issue and what you could actually do within these panels to fix that color issue. Now, this is something I definitely want to go more in depth with. I want to create a full-length course or a full-length video talking about color correction as well as other LUTs that I use, because there's a whole assortment of different things that I do to get the color that I want. You guys can just see the difference. Here's before, here's after. So just a little color grade, but at the same time you need to know that color correction, because it's really going to be a lifesaver, and a lot of the times you're going to have to color correct a bunch of different clips different ways, so make sure you get that down. All right guys, let's move on to the next tip. Now this is a tip that I made a full-length video for, so if you want to see that, link down in the description. But basically this is using After Effects camera to make your shot a lot better. Now here are two examples. As you can see, this is before. This is what the shot looked like normally, shot on a tripod, as you see somebody in the shot. Now if you use this After Effects camera method, it's going to be super useful. You can create shots literally out of nothing. Now let me show you real quick how we can do that, and like I said, I'm just going to briefly talk about this. If you want the full-length tutorial, definitely recommend you watch that. Probably one of my most useful videos I've ever made. Check out the link down in the description, but here is the basis of how you really do it. All you need to do is right-click in Premiere, bring it into After Effects. Then once you have it within After Effects, you can just go ahead and right-click down here, go to New, go to Camera, click OK, and then what you do is make sure you toggle switches and modes until you see this 3D cube. Click that 3D cube, and now it is a 3D layer. And now we can click our camera, click the C key on your keyboard to toggle through your camera controls, and we can move this however we would like. And like I said, if you want the full breakdown of how to really do this, a bunch of other useful tips for this on how to animate the camera, on how to animate the camera, talking about stuff like motion blur, talking about zooming, check that video out because it is insanely useful, and I've been using it for all of my music videos just to really zoom in and emphasize the point of the shot that I really want to emphasize. Now let's go into the last tip. A better example of this, so I actually wanted the grain in this shot just because I thought it looked good with the flickering, and I wanted a film-like look for this music video in particular. But say you shot it at night, you don't want that ugly grain. Like I said, check it out, look up Red Giant Denoiser, link down below. All you need to do is just drag and drop it, and it's just going to smooth it out. You can change any of this so that it doesn't smooth out too much. If you want to see what it looks like, make sure you select it, go to sequence, and then render selection. But if you do mix this effect together with other stuff, sometimes you can run into issues. As you can see, smoothed out a lot more. Here's with the grain, and then with the denoiser on, just like that. I recommend you add the denoiser first before anything, render that out, then add your effects on top of that. Super useful tip check it out, link down in the description. Okay guys, now that is my 5 most useful tips that is going to make your bad footage look a million times better. I also want to give you guys one quick little bonus tip, and that is a super simple tip, which is just to add effects. Now sometimes this can make it look worse, but a lot of the times it can make it look better. For example, if you have a music video that is shot on a phone, something as simple as just adding a little VHS effect can just make the video a million times better. And even though it's not that high quality, you can still create high quality end result. You don't have to have the most crisp footage to make a super cool video. You can just add some cool effects. A really cool one is from Red Giant's Universe pack, so I recommend checking out Red Giant Universe. It gives you a bunch of awesome little effects like this one, Universe VHS. I use it all on this music video just to add more like kind of vintage styling, and it doesn't have to be too fuzzy. What you can do is change any of these little presets, and there's some cleaner versions as well as there's some that change around the colors like U-matic. I like that one a lot. Also, something as simple as adding glowing, flickering, any other creative little effect. Like I said, if you guys do want any effects, check out my website, link down in the description. Anyways guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you did. This is more of like a helpful, useful tip kind of video, something that I think needs to be talked about. Usually my videos are kind of like creative, crazy stuff, but make sure you guys know these tips because these are the things that are really going to make your end result look really good. These are the things that are going to fix the problems that could potentially make or break your project. So like I said, check out all the relevant resources down below that's going to help you out. I recommend you guys save this in a playlist, or like I said, write down these tips somewhere where you can remember them. I'm in the process of moving right now, but I am working on part 2 for the Reaper Bridge tutorial that I made and the Travis Scott tutorial. Part 1s of those were just kind of talking about the basics. I just got Octane the other day and I've been messing around with settings, learning a bunch of awesome new stuff for you guys. Talking about 3D stuff, we're going to be talking about After Effects Premiere, and there's always going to be room for stuff like this, just some basic tips that really go a long way. Anyways guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys later.